So, you guys watched Infinity Train? It's a show that aired on Cartoon Network a while ago. I wouldn't blame you if you haven't, considering the easiest way to watch this show is paying upwards of $70 on the whole series, unless of course you're gonna pirate it like everyone online would suggest that you do. I really wanted to make a video about Infinity Train for a long time, but I wasn't going to resort to piracy because I'm better than that. I would never pirate anything, except if we're talking about 90% of the comics I read. But regardless of how you watched this show, whether you watched it on Cartoon Network when it was first coming out, or you watched it on HBO Max when it became a Max original, or if you pirated it when it stopped being that for some reason, you probably really enjoyed it. It was critically acclaimed, everybody loved it, and Owen Dennis, the show's creator, was rewarded for this success by his show getting canceled for no reason and removed from all streaming services. But it's not all doom and gloom for Owen, because he's apparently running the Among Us show that may or may not get released ever. But what is Infinity Train? I was first exposed to Infinity Train when the pilot was released on YouTube back when Cartoon Network was showing off a ton of pilots. Some of these pilots actually became real shows like Apple and Onion. It's a shame Welcome to My Life didn't get picked up. That one was my favorite. One that I remember getting talked about a lot was the Infinity Train pilot. One that I honestly wasn't crazy about, but I was definitely happy that it got picked up eventually. And holy crap, it turned out so good. I mean, just look at how much better the logo is. Infinity Train is about a girl named Tulip who gets trapped on a mysterious train where every car is its own universe. Tulip is voiced by Ashley Johnson, who you may know as Petra Minecraft Story Mode. Tulip also happens to be from Wisconsin, and I'm not even making that up this time. I'll be honest, guys, the first couple of episodes mentioned Wisconsin a lot, and my brain is way too evil disco rotted to handle it.
Do you know what Wisconsin looks like?
All right, hold on, let me think. I want to say it looks like...
So Tulip wakes up on the Infinity Train after running away from home because of parental issues. Her parents are divorced, and it's honestly a shock how important divorce is as a theme in this show. There's not a lot of children's shows that deal with such heavy subject matter. I mean, death, sure, you know, that's whatever, no big deal. But Tulip's issue of dealing with her parents' divorce is going to be her arc in this first season. On her journey through this mysterious train, she quickly meets fun little companions like One, who's like a little robot ball with two different personalities, and Atticus, who's a corgi played by Ernie Hudson. Ernie Hudson is definitely cool and all, but he's not GOAT status like Ashley Johnson, alright? That's a fact. She also has a number on her hand that correlates to the problems she's facing in her life. When she begins learning to deal with her problems, the number will go down. Once the number gets to 0, she'll be able to go home and apply what she's learned on the train. Everything we learn about the train comes pretty gradually so as to not confuse the audience or overload us with exposition. And I'd say this show does a good job at dangling the mysteries of this train long enough for it to be interesting, but still fast-paced enough for it not to drag. As Tulip goes through the different cars with different gimmicks, she slowly learns more about how the train works and what she needs to do to lower her number. She ends up spending several weeks or even months going through each weird or whimsical car. One of the cars is like this mirror room where everything is reflective, and then Tulip's reflection ends up tricking her into switching places. So now Tulip is stuck in the mirror world and Mirror Tulip is freed. But because Mirror Tulip escaped the mirror world, the Mirror FBI or something showed up and the tone shifts very dramatically. These mirror cops are so serious, like they're treating the situation like it's True Detective, but we're talking about Tulip's reflection not wanting to reflect her all the time. It's pretty heavily implied that this mirror world and the Mirror FBI exist beyond this car. Here I was thinking the only magical stuff in this show was the Infinity Train itself, but it turns out that everyone's reflection is a separate person entirely and is enforced by a secret mirror government to reflect everything that you do. And if your reflection wants to live its own life, it gets sanded down by New Zealander cops. And I know this mirror stuff exists outside of this specific car because the episode ends with Mirror Tulip escaping and living her own life. And at the end of the season, you can see very clearly in the real world that she has no reflection like a vampire. Okay, eventually she runs into this horrifying spaghetti robot and the ominous cloaked mech suit that controls it, who's apparently the conductor of the whole train. She learns about the conductor's life before she was brought to the train many years ago as a passenger like Tulip, overthrew the original conductor who was actually One and now is trying to recreate her old life in one of the cars. Her name is Amelia, and now you know her cool
backstory.
That is pretty cool.
The season ends with Tulip defeating Amelia, giving back 1-1's rightful place as the conductor, and learning to accept the change happening in her life caused by her parents' divorce. And also, she has no reflection now, like Dracula. I think this season was really great. It realized more potential than I thought the pilot initially had. It had a really good sense of tension, especially as the season came to a conclusion. It really had me believing that a major character straight up died. Not literally died, but pretty much died when Atticus was turned into a muck roach or whatever they're called. This show can be pretty heavy and dark sometimes, which I think is really cool. Me, being an adult, watching a show made for children and all. But when it's not dark and scary, it's very charming and goofy. The premise is a big reason why this show was picked up to begin with, I'm sure. But a premise so high concept as this, I wouldn't expect to have a whole lot of detail, because if you explain how all this magic nonsense works, you risk things getting convoluted and creating holes in the logistics of this world, when you could have just let the audience suspend their disbelief and have fun in a world with no rules. Looking at you, I hate Fairyland. But we're given just enough information about the train and how it works for it to remain interesting, while not expositing too much information for it to get uninteresting, you know what I mean? As the seasons go on, we learn more about the train and its functionality, but for this season, I think it was the perfect balance of just enough information while keeping it simple. Our main characters are a lot of fun and have a good dynamic with each other. Everybody is putting on a great performance. I'm an Ashley Johnson stan for life, boy. So if Tulip went home, then how exactly is this series gonna keep going? Is Tulip gonna go back to the train? No, stupid. What do you think this is, Squid Game?
Hong Sing Yong. Hong Sing Yong, Squid Game. From the Squid Game. Using Squid Game, Hong Sing Yong.
Infinity Train is an anthology show. Anthology is a word that means only enjoyed by smart people, such as myself. So season 2 has us following Mirror Tulip. Remember her? When she left Tulip and the others, she decided to explore the train as her own new person, and even get probably the worst makeover imaginable. Listen, it's not her fault, okay? This whole independence thing is new to her. That being said, girl, you look like Steve Lockjaw.
I'm not a homosexual.
In her travels throughout the train, MT finds a car with a super-powered deer and a passenger named Jesse. This will be our group of main characters for this season. Somehow this deer's name was agreed to be Alan Dracula. MT's plan is to help Jesse get his number down so she can hitch a ride with him to the real world. Boom, second Fairyland reference, I'm on a roll. They also have to deal with the mirror cops from the last season too. Now, I gave praise to this show for making these characters delightfully jarring in tone. I thought it was funny how seriously these guys take themselves even when everything else in this show is pretty silly. And they're pretty much the same here, except they fail to capture this literal child so many times in this season. It honestly made them seem very incompetent. They do get brutally killed in unnecessarily violent ways, so that was pretty cool. This is also where we meet the Apex. This is a giant group of passengers being led by this girl named Grace, who are doing the exact opposite of what they should be doing on the train. They think they should be getting their numbers up instead of down, and don't see the inhabitants of the Infinity Train as real people, which they aren't, but like, you don't have to treat them like that, come on. Eventually, Jesse gets his number down after learning not to succumb to peer pressure and instead be true to himself. Which is great and all, but MT can't actually go through the portal, so Jesse goes back home, leaving MT to fend for herself, with the help of Alan Dracula, of course, who's the real MVP of this season. Alan Dracula is actually the strongest character in all of fiction, if you didn't know. After Jesse leaves, MT travels to the tape car where we see how memories of the passengers are collected and analyzed to create the number they get on their hands. MT thought she could get a number by just putting her hand in front of someone else's, but that didn't work. So she's freaking out hard when 1-1 shows up to solve the problem and finds that Jesse has come back to the train. Jesse's new problem that the train needs to be solved requires leaving with MT, and alright, you know what, let's just skip to the end where MT and Jesse leave together, and MT decides that her name is Lake now, like the guy that made Max Payne. I thought this season was pretty good, but I don't think I like it more than the first. It was cool seeing MT. Should I call her MT or should I call her Lake? She doesn't show up again in the series, so I don't even know why she got a new name at the end. Anyway, I like Lake. She was a great choice to focus season 2 on, and her dynamic with Jesse made for a satisfying and captivating arc. Even though I like the characters more in the first season, this one still carried over all of the charm and creativity, but giving us access to greater detail about the train. This is really the reason why I wanted to make a video about this show. Every aspect of the train is thought out and shown in a way that isn't expository or lore heavy. We're just put in situations that show us how the train works, and it feels like all these little details were known by the start of the show. We just weren't being shown it. Everything comes together to make a very solid, fun, and mature series that's really just getting started. Season 3 continues the trend of following new characters. This time we're following Grace and Simon. I feel like I've been watching a lot of things with characters named Simon recently. Anyway, we meet these guys in the last season in a brief confrontation that led to Jesse getting his number all the way down. Grace is the leader of the Apex, a group of rowdy kids that have been indoctrinated by Grace's flawed understanding of the train. She believes that Amelia was the original conductor and was dethroned by 1-1, and that the purpose of the train is to give children, stuff. The train is an escape for their world and they're entitled to do whatever they want. Grace has taught these kids to treat the train like Neverland, and that your number represents power, and that the big bad conductor 1-1 is making kids disappear forever when their numbers reach 0. They also don't believe that the denizens of the train are real or deserve to be treated like real living beings, choosing to call them gnolls as a way to delegitimize their existence. So the Apex just runs amok, looting and destroying every car to their leisure, not caring about the rules of each respective car or the sentient creatures and people that occupy them. Yeah, it's a lot of malarkey, and we're gonna see every single thing Grace thinks she knows about the train be challenged and debunked as this season progresses. Grace was shown from the very beginning to be a very charismatic and charming person, which is how she was able to convince so many people to follow her, including her right-hand man, Simon. The conflict of this season stems from Grace and Simon getting split up from the rest of the Apex, and using Simon's little GPS thing to track the accumulative numbers of all the kids that are several cars ahead. So as they journey toward their home base, they stumble upon Tuba and Hazel. Tuba is this big gorilla that's become kind of like a mother to Hazel as she traverses the train as well. Grace and Simon want to bring Hazel back to the Apex to teach her about their ways of life on the train, but there's two problems. One is that she's very attached to Tuba and will be pretty tricky to convince Hazel that she shouldn't care about Tuba because Tuba is just a construct of the train. And two, her number is for some reason not glowing like they normally do. So they just decide to travel together and deal with all that stuff later. As they travel, Hazel makes Grace and Simon play by the rules of the cars for the first time. We also see Grace's number go down because of this, a symbol of her power and leadership now suddenly diminishing as they spend more time with Hazel and Tuba. Both Simon and Grace want to get rid of Tuba, but Simon is much more brash and blunt about it. Contrast this with Grace, who tries to be as warm and friendly to Hazel as possible and really struggles to figure out a way to detach Hazel to her gnoll companion. Eventually, just as it seems like Simon is finally warming up to Tuba as well, he betrays her at the last minute and she falls into the wheels of the train cars. Yeah, seriously. A main character just died. For real. This moment doesn't come completely out of nowhere since we've seen characters die before, but this isn't like when Atticus turned into a weird roach monster and then turned back into a dog later. Tuba, a main character, was straight up murdered by Simon, another main character. And this is a real actual death because she's gonna stay dead. She doesn't come back. This is really dark for a show like this. It got kinda dark sometimes, but this was more than I ever could have expected. I've been roaming around, always looking down at all I see. This obviously upsets Hazel tremendously to the point of her turning into a turtle person, so all is revealed. Hazel is a creation of the train, and not a coincidental passenger they happen to have stumbled across. That's also why her number isn't glowing, because it's not a real number like the other passengers have. Ha ha, Grace, the train totally tricked you into feeling compassion for a gnoll. But Simon would obviously freak out if he saw that Hazel was a denizen of the train, so to protect her from being wheeled herself, Grace decides to keep her turtle powers a secret. They keep going even if tensions are very high between them all right now, and Grace is grappling with the fact that she's starting to love what she has been calling gnolls for years. As they get closer to the rest of the Apex, they pass Amelia! They realize that they've been making their way toward her instead of what they thought was a huge cluster of numbers making up the rest of the kids in the Apex car. They get a little bit acquainted with Amelia, and we learn that after being stripped of her conductorship, she now works for 1-1 in order to fix any anomalies that may have been caused by her shoddy car-making abilities. The anomaly she's been hunting was Hazel herself, because we learn that she was a creation of Amelia attempting to create her old husband. So everything is going totally upside down. Now that Simon knows that Hazel is a null, Amelia was the conductor they've been idolizing, and their entire understanding of the train is 100% false, Simon still clings to their original perception of the train, while Grace starts to doubt everything she thought she knew. Hazel decides to leave with Amelia so she can study her, after kind of treating her like a null just because she's afraid of losing her status as leader of the Apex in front of Simon. Simon traps Grace in her memories, similar to what we saw in the first season with Tulip, while Simon goes back to the Apex. When Grace escapes and gets back to the Apex car, even though she wouldn't know where it is, Simon has made himself the new ruler of the Apex and now sees Grace as an enemy. His number has risen considerably higher and has gone full anime villain. And then they start fighting and stuff, and yeah. Eventually, as they're fighting on the bridge between train cars, one of those weird roach dog things started attacking them. As they fend off the roach dog thing, Grace actually saves Simon from falling off. And then immediately, no hesitation, no second thought, kicks Grace off the side of the bridge. His cruel and selfless act made his number go even higher, covering his entire body pretty much. But it's okay because the paper cranes that Grace was nice to earlier came in clutch and saved her. But the roach dog thing is back and steals Simon's soul in front of all the children watching, in the audience and in the show.
Yo guys, it's me, Charlie. Hey, did that guy just turn into Saiyan?
I can't believe they killed off the co-lead Indiana Jones style on this Cartoon Network show for little babies. This season ends with Grace explaining to the rest of the kids in the Apex that it was wrong for her to have controlled how these kids understand the train and live their lives on it. And that's pretty much where season 3 ended. I thought this season was really good and made for a very unique entry into this anthology. The Apex didn't seem like a very interesting angle to center an entire season on, but I would have said the same for Mirror Tulip. It's really cool that the show can take characters that I didn't have much interest in following and turn them into some of my favorites in the series. It has probably the most interesting plot development among all the seasons. Hazel being revealed to be a creation of the train is the exact point where I had no idea what was going to happen. It made for such a compelling plot point that really made me invested in Grace's character and how she's going to deal with such an earth-shattering revelation. Is she going to change the way she treats Hazel, or is she going to change the way she treats denizens of the train? It wasn't hard to predict how it was going to play into her character arc, but it was still exciting to see this change, since we, the audience, know she's been wrong about the train, and we've been anticipating her finding out the truth since the last season. And then on top of it all, we see Amelia again, which was also completely unexpected. I really didn't think we'd see her again after losing her spot as the conductor in season 1. This is the first time seeing Amelia after the end of the first season. I assumed 1-1 took her out back and, it'd be a better way to go out than what Simon got. Season 3 is very easily my favorite season of the show. It has great characters as usual, but seeing them change in either unexpected or sincere ways really made this the more narratively intriguing for me. I give it thumbs up. Before I move on to season 4, I just wanted to add in a little more of my thoughts on Simon. I'm adding this part way into the editing process, so the audio might sound a little different here. But Simon's character is really interesting to me, mainly in how he reacts to learning that Grace was holding the truth from him. He goes on a borderline psychopathic meltdown because Grace didn't want him to know about Hazel's turtleness. I echo what she said here.
But I had to keep Hazel safe. I've made a lot of mistakes, but that wasn't one of them.
Dude, this is what, 60 seconds after you murdered Hazel's surrogate mother in cold blood? What exactly was Grace supposed to say to console her? She was scared that you were gonna kill her too after you killed her gorilla mom. This moment could have been the time to confess that Grace knew all along, and maybe it wouldn't have been as big a deal to Simon, but she didn't have any reason to. I joke about how Simon became an anime villain after this point, but more realistically, he became a character in his stupid novel. Yeah, I didn't mention it, but Simon is really into fiction writing and playing with figurines. It seemed like an insignificant detail at first, but when the cat said this, who's a character I'll talk about later, it suddenly made a lot more sense.
She's not acting like she should!
And how exactly should she be acting? She's not one of your miniatures, Simon.
It made that small detail to his character relevant to his character progression. Simon is obsessed with the stories in his head. Some of them he knows to be fictitious, and some he believes to be real. But as soon as the story is going in a direction he doesn't like, he goes loco and starts playing up his fantasies even harder. He loses touch with reality when reality dissatisfies him, and he starts performing as one of his made-up characters. That's why he suddenly becomes so dramatic and over the top in this final showdown. And it was such a bold choice to kill off this character. This was an unsatisfying arc for Simon because he didn't learn anything. For some reason, he was just incapable of seeing the world as anything besides what Grace had convinced him it was. And that's really the saddest part of it all. Simon, nor anyone else in the Apex, really has no reason to take Grace's word for what the train is for, or who the conductor is, or what the numbers mean, but she's just so charismatic in a manipulative, cultish way that she practically made Simon the way he is. It's easy to look at Simon and the way he just thoughtlessly dismisses any and all information that Amelia gives them and think, wow, this guy sucks. But I think that makes him a much more complex and realistic character to me. We've all met people who just can't believe the truth, even when it's spelled out to them. It's just the way that some people are. And I think Simon really shows that concept in a well-written way. At the end of the day, I think Season 3 of Infinity Train is about cult-like leaders and philosophy and how dangerous it can be to fill people's heads with false information. I think it's really interesting the dichotomy of Grace's character and Simon's character and how they deal with their worldviews being shattered. One is able to accept that she was wrong, and one doubled down on the lie he's been fed. Anyway, if you want your worldview shattered, go to comeuntoChrist.org.
Fetch me their soul!
Season 4 was the first time the show was made as an HBO Max exclusive. Very odd, considering Infinity Train is no longer on HBO Max. But either way, Season 4 is out, and it does not follow Amelia and Hazel, despite most people expecting/predicting that. Instead, we follow Ming Gi and Ryan, two passengers that enter the train at the same time and with the same number. We're going pretty significantly far back chronologically, right before Amelia took possession of the train. Considering how old Amelia looks here and how old she looks in the present day, this is probably several decades before the events of Season 1, back when passengers had to wear these ugly uniforms. I'm telling you, Ryan is the only one in the Infinity Train universe that has any drip whatsoever. It's embarrassing.
Drip, you're not even up on this shit.
That shit is not drip. You need to return that shit.
Bro, this shit is morning, bro. This shit is $700.
$700. You paid $700 for that shit?
Drip, nigga.
Like a big ass Angry Bird. That is not drip.
But anyway, Min and Ryan have no idea what's going on as they're flung right in the middle of a conflict involving these blue badger things and this flying talking bell. The bell's name is Kez, and she'll be a main character in this season. Kez is voiced by Minty Lewis, a writer on Regular Show and the voice of Eileen. I'm bringing her voice actress up because I think your enjoyment of this season is going to be heavily swayed by how much you like this character and Minty's performance as this character. I'm on the side of liking Kez. I think she's funny and adds a lot of energy and chaos to the plot. But I can see people finding her obnoxious. Listen, there's a lot of millennialism in this show. 1-1, Jesse, Ryan. But Kez is, in my opinion, the most millennialist character on the show. I'm just gonna assume you know what I'm talking about when I say that. It can be a little eye-roll inducing, but let's not kid ourselves. A lot of Cartoon Network shows from the 2010s are like this to a certain extent. Anyway, this season revolves around Kez helping Ryan and Min navigate the train and get their numbers down. They go on their way to Kez's home car and, like usual, encounter tons of strange and eccentric characters and locations. The only difference is that Kez has already interacted with the cars we're going through, usually causing major problems there. Kez, for the most part, is the root of all the conflict Ryan and Min find themselves in upon entering each car. This might be another reason why some people might not like Kez, but I think it made for a very unexpected and well-executed arc for her near the end of the season. But Kez's arc only happens in the background to what the season is obviously more focused on, and that's Min and Ryan's way of dealing with their drastically different upbringings, despite being lifelong friends, as seen in this really inventive first episode where we see their lives being observed tangentially by 1-1 and Amelia. Like every season before it, our main character's journey through the Infinity Train was really well done and realistic. It's honestly amazing how well the writers have been able to pull off compelling and unique arcs in every single season. It was also cool seeing the exact moment Amelia took control of the train. We didn't really need to see how it happened, but it made for a stronger connection to the previous seasons. Speaking of connections, the cat is another character that makes a brief appearance. This is undoubtedly her smallest role yet, which was pretty disappointing since last season was undoubtedly her biggest role. I haven't mentioned the cat at all because I didn't really think she was important to mention for the purpose of this video. But the cat is really cool, and one of the only characters that appears in every season. In the last season, her connection to Simon and how it clearly affected the way he acts throughout season 3 really made the cat an even more mysterious and intriguing character than she already was. But in season 4, she shows up unexpectedly like always, but she doesn't really do anything. She hides Ming, Ryan, and Kez from the Caterpillar Sheriff because she finds the whole double passenger thing interesting, but then sells them out to collect their bounty, and then shows up at the end like it was all part of her plan, which, like, okay, sure, but we never see the cat again, so it's like, did she want to learn more about the double passenger thing or not? They made it seem like she would be more important going forward, but she never was. This season might be my least favorite in the whole show, but it's still really good because J.K. Simmons plays a giant pig baby, and also because the characters are really well written, and the ideas are so out there and creative, but I just don't think there was much to make this one stand out apart from being about 2 passengers instead of 1. And even then, Grace and Simon were both passengers too. And the dichotomy of Grace's number going down while Simon's kept going up was a really clever thing to do with multiple passenger protagonists. Seeing how Ryan and Min's relationship affects their numbers on top of their perspectives on the train made for a unique angle to this season. It's just there's nothing this season does better than any other season, besides being rated TVMA for some reason. Should it really be TVMA just because Kez calls the Bug Cowboys queers?
More friends of yours?
These queers? I don't think so.
And that was that. Infinity Train was donezo. I guess season 4 didn't perform well enough for it to get renewed for another season that potentially followed Grace, Amelia, or Hazel, despite the very large and dedicated fan base that this show created. And even worse than getting canceled is getting erased from existence. There are currently 0 streaming services that have Infinity Train. You have to either buy it on Amazon Prime or YouTube. Except season 3 is not available on Amazon for apparently licensing reasons. Bro, what even are the licenses for this show? It was created for Cartoon Network, which is owned by Warner Bros., and then made into an exclusive on HBO Max, which is also owned by Warner Bros. Am I stupid, or is it really obvious who should own the licenses to air this show? I don't understand why this billion-dollar corporation can't maintain the rights to the programs they created. This isn't an issue for any other studio. Paramount Plus isn't losing the rights to SpongeBob because Paramount created SpongeBob. Disney Plus isn't losing the rights to freaking Zeke and Luther or whatever, which is another show that kind of slaps. Don't look up what happened to Luther, though.
I'll be stealing, I'll be robbing, I'll be looting.
You could pirate the show as suggested by the show's creator. Seriously? Pirating is definitely cheaper than buying seasons 1, 2, and 4 on Amazon and season 3 on YouTube. Why didn't I just buy the whole series on YouTube?
Shout out my apes in the fucking
Look, guys, I'm not saying that I'm morally superior to you if you decide to pirate this show. Okay, I'm not saying that. But I am thinking it. Like Martin Luther once said, I have a dream that one day we will find out what happened to Grace and the Apex, to Amelia and Hazel, to Jesse and Lake. I have a dream that this video gets 1 billion views, and not only do I make a lot of money off of ad revenue, but also it revitalizes the Warner Brothers' interest in this show, and we finally get a season 5 or 6. Or maybe even 7. If the 6'7" kid went to the Infinity Train, how big would his number be, do you think? Who would have a bigger number on the Infinity Train? The 6'7" kid or Adam Hicks? It's time to rank the Infinity Train seasons worst to best. Are you ready, chat? The worst is season 4, as I've said, but it's still very good. Next is season 2, which again is also very good. Then comes season 1, which is the season that came before season 2. And then the best is season 3, which is the season that came after season 2, which is the second to last place in this ranking, but before season 4, which is in last place in this ranking. Okay, goodbye. Coming up next on It Kinda Slaps.
Turning into mommy.